There are more than 500 language groups in Papua New Guinea, and naturally people from each of these different cultural groups want to come to the capital. When they come to Port Moresby, obviously everything is not as wonderful as they thought. There are slums developing, there are overcrowded housing estates, and so on. Now, usually the latest comers to the town cannot even afford the cheapest of the government housing, so all they can do is to squat on the outskirts of the town, being tolerated by Papuan landowners, but being under constant threat from government officials who feel they shouldn't be there and that they should be shifted. In the 70s, the people who were the squatters, who were the last comers, were the Goilala people who came from the mountains that are just to the north of Port Moresby. They had something like 8 squatter camps. The biggest of these camps was situated just about 100 meters from the city's rubbish dump. The buildings were knocked together quickly from old bits of timber, from bits of corrugated iron. They were real shanty towns, very, very bleak indeed. The 5 or 6 families in a squatter camp all came from the same village at home. The fact that they retained this village structure meant that unlike other people who lived scattered in government housing estates, the squatters were all from one group, from one language, from one culture, and therefore they were the only ones who could really stage traditional festivals in Port Moresby. Once every 18 months or 2 years, the drabness and bleakness of these squatter camps is totally transformed into a blaze of color and excitement. It would take a squatter camp 6 to 9 months to a year to prepare for one of these traditional festivals. The festival in Port Moresby did no longer have the traditional reason. They did not center around boys' initiation because the kids would now go to school. They did not center around ancestral worship. They did not center around warfare. They had more social occasions. In a traditional festival, people would decorate the trees that were lining the dancing ground. What they would do is to cut long sticks and tie them on the trees, and the trees then began to look like Roman fasces. And these sticks were used to tie on bananas, cucumbers, yams, all kinds of other vegetables and fruit that were used during the festival. But now in Port Moresby, this decoration changed. And living close to the rubbish dump and looking around all the things they could find there, they found tins of paint, tins with remnants of paint, and it gave them the idea to cut huge tree trunks in the forest, strip them of bark and branches, and plant them in the ground like huge pillars, and paint them from top to bottom with very, very bright and colorful designs. Designs, by the way, which don't relate to their traditional form of decoration. Whenever the Goilala people had a festival, they would build platforms for the important visitors to sit on and look down from this platform on the dance at night. The chief celebrant in these festivals had to be decorated by the community. They had to paint his body, they had to put feathers on his head and so on. And usually they built a special hut in which this took place. One of the wonderful things about these festivals was that once they broke with the convention of decoration, there was a tremendous flow of imagination. And each festival was different. For example, in the big squatter camp, when they built the celebrant's hut, they had the idea of using advertising posters. They used posters for guinea gold cigarettes. They used them because they're bright red and yellow. They used them as color. People began to paint murals on the houses. And none of the people painting these houses ever made a painting before, never painted a mural before. It was a spontaneous thing that happened. One of the people who went into the swamps to cut trees actually got lost in the swamp. So in his honor, they built a little hut, which was like a mausoleum, with an inscription saying, "This man went to the swamp to cut trees and he never returned." The rubbish dump was a very rich source of materials. They found celluloid dolls, stuck them up on trees, used them as images. They found bits of Christmas decoration. They found a tailor's dummy. The only thing that the people kept from one festival to the other were the feathers themselves. Obviously, it is not possible in Port Moresby to get bird of paradise feathers, cockatoo feathers, eagle feathers, and so on. But even the cane structure for the headdress on which the feathers were stuck was redone, recreated every year. These spectacular headdresses are sometimes almost 20 feet high. And although they are the most traditional part of this festival, they're still being elaborated upon with all kinds of found materials. The festival itself usually lasts for 3 days. The squatter camp staging the festival will invite all the other squatter camps from Port Moresby to share this festival with them. They will kill 40, 50, 60 pigs. They will feast the visitors. They will build special huts for the visitors to live in during those 3 days. And the actual festival takes place at night. There are 2 nights of dances for the men and 1 night for the women. The dancing is lit up by torches made from long dry grass, which is usually held by the women. And these torches light up the feathers, particularly the white eagle feathers reflect the light, whereas the bodies of the dancers remain in total darkness. The beauty of the Golala festivals in Port Moresby is that here you have, in the 1970s, an art form which is entirely communal. It's not an individual personal expression. It is something that is essential for the survival of the community. And it is an exciting thing to see that so much effort can be made to produce art which is then totally unmarketable. Art, the value of which consists entirely in the making of it and not in the finished object. The visual magic of these dances and the hypnotic effect of the drumming is such that even the uninitiated outsider feels that he is in the presence of spirits. And yet within 24 hours, the Galola people dismantle the entire festival. They cut down the trees, they burn it as firewood, they paint out the murals, and they go back to their bleak, everyday existence.